dancing, but they were there to save lives. So I do believe that it is not a mistake that today on Human Rights Day in South Africa, we are receiving the remains of Sister Koleka here in South Africa to celebrate human lives and to also celebrate human rights, to celebrate the nurses that ensure that human rights does always take center stage in the craft that they have. This day affords us a collective opportunity to reflect and acknowledge the sacrifices during the 1960 Sharpeville massacre, which claimed the lives of hundreds of people. The Sharpeville massacre, like many watershed moments in our history, is a reminder of the journey traveled in the pursuit of liberation and democracy in South Africa. Equally, we must reflect on the sacrifices made by Sister Koleka and the other night angels. Am I calling it correct? Night angels, yes, nurses, to protect and promote the fundamental human right to access the healthcare services in South Africa and in Tanzania. And it was also great to also hear it was not only in Tanzania, but it was also in Nigeria and in Ghana and many other countries in Africa. So that really gives a warm heart to know that our history and our future will always be intertwined, not only because of what we get from each other, but because of the solidarity that we have with one another. It is very important. Ladies and gentlemen, historically, South Africa and the Republic of Tanzania have a long-standing friendship which was established and strengthened during the struggle for freedom against apartheid regime. We reflect on the solidarity relationship between President Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and former President of the African National Congress, O.R. Tambo, which has led to a long-standing friendship between our countries and governing parties, the ANC and the Tanzanian Chama Chama Pinduzi. Most of us here, I think we have gone to Tanzania on our own, on a pilgrimage, of course, to go and honor those that came before us. I know I've been to Mazimbu, I've been to Morogoro, and some of the friendship that we have today are actually friendship that will be long-standing precisely because of these two relationships that I've just reflected on here today. Tanzania has been a home of refuge to many liberation movements across the country, including the ANC, PAC in South Africa, Frelimo in Mozambique, SWAPO in Namibia, and ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, and many other more. Our rich history as African countries to demonstrate the power and the need for people-to-people exchange to advance common goal is definitely something that needs to be celebrated and nurtured even further, not only on occasions such as this one. Distinguished guests, often when we reflect on the journey to freedom and the promotion and protection of human rights, the contribution of women are often erased or silenced or even ignored, like I've already said. The 2019 Angels are another example of the critical interventions made by women in the height of the struggle for the liberation of South Africa. It is critical that when we tell our story that women like Sister Koleka Tunyiswa and their contributions are not omitted. We need to start writing more. Not only should we only write, but we should probably even include it in academia so that young people can be able to do their thesis based on the impact that women has actually played in the role that or freedom fighters have actually done in the freedom that we have here today. As we welcome the remains of Sister Koleka back home where she was born, amongst her people, days just after the state visit of Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan, the first female president of Tanzania, I'm very proud to say, in fact, that at least we are seeing a difference and we are seeing, I can say it's an improvement in high echelons of society, in the role that women are given and the responsibilities that are given to be able to also contribute meaningfully to society as a whole. As the government of South Africa, under the leadership of His Excellency President Matamela Ramaphosa, we commit to strengthening bilateral agreements between our countries to advance a collective agenda to improve the livelihood of our people and grow the economies of our country. As a matter of fact, Deputy Minister, Her Excellency, the President of Tanzania, and I think it was also something that the High Commissioner also gave, was that they are going to ensure that at least they sent us more names that we should be able to put on our constitutional hill from Tanzania, to say that we should celebrate those heroes. And I would honestly and humbly request that, as much as Sister Koleka was a South African, I think it would be good that, and it will be an honor as well and right, that we should also include her when we talk about the heroes that were in Tanzania. As much as she was a South African, I think she deserves a space right there on the names that you'll be able to send us. In conclusion, because the former Deputy President is still going to speak to us, the National Human Rights Day, we remember the work of Sister Koleka and many South Africans nurses. And today, as South Africa, we pride ourselves in the 29 years of official diplomatic relations we have formed with Tanzania over many decades. Beyond diplomatic ties, these relations have been built on the principle of social justice, Pan-Africanism, and the need to work together to the fulfillment of our liberation against the residue of colonialism. In the words of Wangari Maathai, a Kenyan social, environmental, and a political activist, and the first African woman to win the Nobel Prize, and I open quote, human rights are not things that are put on the table for people to enjoy. These are things to fight for, and then you protect. So therefore, we should ask ourselves when we move from here, what is the role that we are going to play in order to protect that which Sister Koleka have fought for, that which Sister Koleka have sacrificed their lives for, to be able to give to the people of Tanzania, and also what Tanzanians have also given to us. With that, let me take this opportunity to thank you, the family of Sister Koleka, for borrowing us as South Africa, a heroine that we can always be proud of. And wherever we are, we can always use her as a shining bright star that would be able to lead most of us to what we know it is a responsibility. Not only something to shine, but a responsibility to play a meaningful role. Of course, it is such an honor that we still have sisters sitting there who spoke to us today, whom we can listen to and be able to ask questions, and be able to then now get clarity on how do you actually give over your life in that particular way. With that, let me take this opportunity, of course, to introduce to you a remarkable woman that does not necessarily need any introduction, but because it is protocol, I have to do that. Let me introduce to you the former Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mambaleka, as we know her, Mambaleka Mbete, who is going to give us a keynote address. Mambaleka Mbete Homu was born on the 24th of September. I won't say the year that she was born. They won't believe me because you look 30 years younger. So let me not even confuse them even further. She has served, of course, as the Speaker of the National Assembly between 2004 and 2008, and as well as 2014 to 2019, respectively. Baleka Mbete Homu served as the Deputy President of South Africa, as I've already said, between 2008 and 2009, under the then President Kgalema Motlanthe. She was elected as the National Chairperson of the African National Congress, which was something that we were so proud of in 2007, and re-elected again in 2012. After going into exile in 1976, Memma Homu taught in Mbabane in Swaziland and went on to work for the ANC in several other African cities, including Dar es Salaam itself in Tanzania. She is currently leading us as the women of the ANC Women's League as our convener, to rebuild the structures of the ANC Women's League, but also to play a meaningful role into making sure that the state become a capable one. Memma Balega, Memma Homu, sicela uzothethe nathi mama. Thank you so much.
Misa Thixo siyakuvuma ukuba ungu Yehova umhlaba wonke ubhedesha wena oyise ongunaphakade uyingcwele 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 Yehova Thixo wemikhosi izulu lizele kwanomhlaba oyise ongunaphakade amen ameni amen amen ameni amen ameni amen amen ameni Nkosi ngithembe wena amani ngaze ndidaniswe Nkosi ngithembe wena amani ngaze ndidaniswe Nkosi ngithembe wena amani ngaze ndidaniswe.
Ngiyabonga. Asante sana. Today is a day whose theme is history. So I rise on that note of history, and I found myself, as I was thinking over the hours since this morning about coming here, going back to Tanzania, because my personal history, along with the history of the organization I come from, took me to Tanzania at some point. So now I want to say one thing to you. Nobody leaves their country out of choice. Osis colleagues, they were approached because a necessity had arisen. A need had been identified. And the leaders of that time, and the opportunity for us to dwell in the theme of history enables us to remember the type of leadership, Pan-Africanists. That's why there was a team all over the country that identified young women. Look at this colleague when she left. Nyambono is butu. She is so young and, her face is like that of a ripe tomato. I'm sure babenje bonke noma mshumpela. Sibonisa ifoto yakho nawe ngela xesha. So when Mwalimu Nyerere approached OR about the difficulty that had arisen in Tanganyika because British nurses could not stomach the idea of serving under a black government, and therefore they were packing and going back to England, Africans said, Ingangati, it's okay. We'll find people willing to serve among our own people. And the rest is the history that we've been listening to today. Now, I said to you, nobody leaves the country out of choice, out of the blue. Ucabanga ukuthi wena uzoshiya abazali bakho, ushiye ilizwe lakho, and go to another country which you don't know. You don't know any other place but where you come from. And so that's how exile must be understood. I mean, sometimes I listen to South Africans calling themselves exiles and insiles, and I wonder, what kind of madness is this? At which point do we become anything other than South Africans? At what point do we feel that, in fact, is the correct thing? It makes sense to label each other exiles. I believe the history that happened in any place outside the borders of South Africa is South African history. That was South African history happening outside the borders of the country because at that time we had to go and pursue the goals of our revolution in spite of what was happening in the history of the colonial oppression our people had been suffering from for decades, for centuries actually. So, much as it was like that, sometimes we did create moments of happiness, of enjoyment, and I want to read you a short poem that was written in 1981 in Tanzania. It was the eve of departure of colleagues, a South African woman who was married to a British man, and an American, a black American. We all had formed a community that we all belonged to. So on the eve of their departure, we hosted a farewell party at our house. Brawili was still alive. Those that are old enough to know who's Brawili. The title of the poem is Party, for Jamila, Bruce, and Jim. We carve this moment deep in the wall of our times. We dance all weakness and aches away. We move all curtains and let soul touch soul. We dance deep into the past to reclaim the drum whose song binds us. We dance far into the future when we will have built a monument of love and peace and dance. Thanks. As I say, today's theme is history. I want to make just a few points, not more than 3. To say it is important to respect and to acknowledge history. It is history that will help the younger ones understand events in their lives as they grow up and they grapple with the issues of life into the future. They must understand who they are. They must understand why things are the way they are in their lives as they experience the life. Umama lo before ngifike kuwe sis mamshumpela make ngiqale apha kumember yefamily. Siyabulela for that history. You put things into perspective for younger members of your family to understand family history, to understand broader community history in the community that the Tunyiswas come from. I was there at the burial of the ashes of Usis Edith, the older sister that left with Usis colleague. Eqebeha, end of last year. We were talking to the community, but I realized that these are much younger people that we were talking to. And therefore, you have to bring things from a few decades before to bring them into where we are, for them to understand what happened. South Africans, both South Africans and Tanzanians, are learning for the first time that there were these 20 nightingales. Sibonga kuwena Tatu Khwinana. Siyabulela. Now, I'm so lucky I'm a member of the ANC, because it is the ANC that has given me tasks over time that have helped me to learn. I was once given the task of leading a program to mark the 100 years of the life of the African National Congress, the centenary of the ANC. And in that context, I happened to have to go to a few other countries around the globe. And that's when I learned just what the ANC means. Not to us alone, members who are here at home, because I got to be told by people around the globe what they expect of the ANC members, the few who are here inside South Africa, to look after their ANC. People of African origin look up to the African National Congress. I was told by a 90-something-year-old man who led the UN, the UNESCO program of marking the centuries that were marked by the UN system itself, to mark people of African origin, their history, their culture, their indigenous knowledge systems, and their right to those systems being protected, and to this day we enjoying them. And therefore, as part of the decolonization program, let us remember who we are originally before we were colonized. the United Nations has declared the right of all of us, as we talk and piece our history together, to go back to our cultural roots and enjoy who we are, and therefore where, in fact, the old man who met these 20 nightingales that you didn't mention, Mama Shumpela, umlibele utatu Ali Sykes, umlibele. He was referred to as the godfather of all exiles in Dar es Salaam. His grandfather, loyo tata, Mzee Ali Sykes, died recently, and President ngibana nini gama lakhe? No, the more younger president, Kikwete, President Kikwete buried Utatu Ali Sykes, who met these 20 nightingales when they arrived. He was the grandson of a man called Sykes Mbuwane, who fought eSandlwana. Sykes Mbuwane was a graduate of Sandlwana that had defeated the British in Sandlwana. All Sykes Mbuwane were recruited by Germans to go and assist them in Namibia, what is now known as Namibia, Southwest Africa then, and ended up in Tanzania and married there and gave birth. And Utatu Ali Sykes is his grandson, who becomes the main person who's deployed to be the coordinator in receiving exiles coming to Tanzania. You know, the most uncomfortable moment I'll ever remember going to Dar es Salaam is when I was part of the delegation of Ubabu JZ after he had become president. And we arrived in Tanzania, and the first structure that met us were ama veterans, amaxhego akhona. Basibuza ukuthi why did we kill so many Tanzanians here? During the so-called xenophobic. It's only because Ubabu Zuma uyigagu that he found a way of responding. I mean, how do you explain being part of the family and then the next thing you come and you send people to come and kill that same family that have kept you and looked after you at your most needy? So, there are things that we've got to work on, and I don't know sizazithini ngoba siyagula. Because for a start, the very carving up of the African continent into what we now have inherited as countries, as nation states, and therefore on the basis of those that we have inherited out of being oppressed and colonized and being confused out of that process, we hate each other as though we are actually not of the same blood and of the same flesh, of the same history. We are Africans, we are the same people. These borders that we were told by colonials that we must create, where you have more Botswana in Bophuthatswana, here, our province, Northwest, than in Botswana. But we created the border because Abelungu babethi we should do it. And now we embrace it. It's so important to us. We're prepared to die. We're prepared to kill for it. Africans, phakamani, phaphamani. Ngicela siphaphame. Sis colleague, I'm told just this afternoon that actually Joyce left here, supposed to go and pick her up. I'm told, Joyce, you were supposed to bring her back. But Sis colleague, I think I know why she didn't come. Because Sis colleague was a true daughter of her culture. She met, I'm sure he was handsome. Tatako. I am very suspicious he was handsome. Because from the way Umam Shumpela is explaining things, there's no way that he would have been anything but handsome. I think because he had left this earth, I imagine if I was in her shoes, I would have stayed until it was time to actually be taken back home in the form in which she is joining us. I understand it. I know it would have been nice if she had come back, esaphila, esancokola, esathetha, but I know deep in her soul she could not have left Dar es Salaam and leave umyeni wakhe back there until she had to. Because I also, when I was part of burying Sis Edith, was told that she had given the instruction that the same had to happen with her as happened with Ama remains Sis Edith, that they were taken to where the parents sleep, which is a wish that many of us have, that you want to sleep with the people who brought you to this life. You want to be with them. But then you fall in love with some handsome guy. So, for instance, nginhlebele nje imfihlo encane, I had committed myself, Tati ukuthi hayi mina ngizolala eMqanduli. That's where my parents are sleeping. And he being a Democrat, angithi uqabane, comrade, so ungibuzile wathi wena ke so ithini into yakho? Thi mina no ngizolala lapha nabazali. Ndiyanixelela kaloku ngoba ndifuna unixelela uba itshintshile. Itshintshile loo nto. The story of how and kwathini is for another day. Today is about history. History is feared by those that have things they don't like, and they have things that they want to live in the dark. As part of the journey we went, going back to visit anti-apartheid groups around the globe, we reached Jamaica. And one of the activities was going to the University of West Indies. And the professor there, very beautiful woman who was wearing umbhaco. She had been here as a visitor. Yala. She asked, why is it that former colonies are not encouraged to teach history? It's because the colonizers don't want history to come out. And nani ke nizawuhlala nivume. I keep asking Minister Angie Mutsaikha when I come across her, itini into of your subcommittee, because I know she created a committee of historians to discuss the question of the teaching of history in our schools, in our education system, because history is absolutely essential for the African child. Because how else is the African child going to know who they are and why are things the way they are? What happened? Is it because our people are stupid? Of course not. So I came across a comrade, a professor, who's a historian, who the way ekunzima ngayo in that space of that subcommittee, where they have this task, minister, about this teaching of history in our education system. Uyabona ukuthi man, hey, engathi uzawubulawa. His very life is in danger because he's chairing this subcommittee. And of course, he must come out with an outcome. We must teach history in our schools because we require our children to know who they are, where they come from, what's the history of this country that has created the challenges that we still are faced with today. So, sexism, which is one of the areas that are clearly identified in the goals of our revolution. We are fighting for a non-sexist South Africa, a non-sexist society, where the fact that there was once an academic, a brilliant woman, the first graduate, Charlotte Maxeke, in this country, was only because a young historian who happened to be part of a team that were working under President Thabo Mbeki at the time, and discovered this name, and then went around looking for more information, and could not find the archives about her, because women get written out of history unless we come and we tell the history the way we are telling it today. Diakbon. Hi, Ndivil. Sis colleague, welcome home. With you, your passing, the way you took the final decisions about the last moments of your life, honoring a life you had started in an honorable country with honorable people who at some point looked after trained guerrillas in their geographic area that numbered even more than their own trained soldiers at the time in Tanzania. That's Mwalimu Nyerere for you. So trusting of us that he had more trained people from Frelimo, from MK, from APLA, from all manner of organizations from Southern Africa that were still fighting for their freedom, hosting them in his country, many more in numbers at the time than his own national army. But he didn't mind. What was important was the solidarity that informed that relationship at that time. Then Tanzanians come and die here. Joyce, asante sana for your mother. Thank you very much for sharing her with this country. I know you had a right to decide that she must sleep next to your father. And he would have had a right to have her next to her. But we've honored Sis Kolega's last wishes to come back home. Ayolala nabazali bakhe. Siyabulela kuSis Kolega for her life, for her sacrifice, and the sacrifices of all of that generation. No Mama Mshumpela usaphila, and yambona Mama Mshumpela usaphilile, akazi ukuhamba. Especially because there's still history to be written. And ulapa for that. You must stick around. You must make sure that history is recorded. Nangu tatu kwina nafuna ningahlukani ninga exchange ama details so that you can interview her. Nangu ya global esi story senu. Gumchana wako, that's what he was telling me. He was telling me that nae umma wakhe waka Mshumpela. Waka Mshumpela ne? Hayi siyabulela, asante sana. High Commissioner. Yabulela ukuthi sonke esifikile la sazo honorisha ukuza kamama wethu. Thank you to the family for sharing her with us, the two families, both the Shabani and the Tunyiswa. Thank you to the nurses for their love and their dedication in the COVID times. And wesizanibetha musiza manje sinitshela amaqiniso angemnandanga, like we in politics normally have to. But kufuneka you know, you should accept ukuthi hayi injalo. Uzayithini? Siyabulela. Qhubekani nokubheka abantu bethu. Uma wami was a nurse. She was a nurse. No, now was a teacher. Siyabulela.
Thanks, Khadi. Thank you very much. I think sonke siyavuma intoba we had one of the best human rights days to celebrate. Now, I am just going to allow the people that are just going to do the vote of thanks. I'm not coming back here on this podium. Just to let you know that the reburial is on the 22nd of April, eGqeberha. Siyaya, Mosanditi. 22nd of April, eGqeberha. Mabeze ke abo bakhethiweyo bazazokwenza umbulelo. And as they are coming, I hope when the national anthems were being sung, you had realized that the Tanzanian national anthem and the South African national anthem, there are similarities. I hope you have realized that, because there was a time that all the frontline states had the same national anthem, Unkosi Sikeleli Africa. I hope you understood that. Izani ke bantu bazobulela. Upho Bhutmazwi. Bhutmazwi kaloku ufama sawulapha ngoku. Siya iplane sasuka apha thina siyokhwela iplane siye eKapa. Njengoba sibona nje sibona ngasiyanigijimisa.
I'm not sure where to start, but first let me observe all the protocols. Minister, ngicela uma kule protocol yakho ibeke kamnandi. So, greetings and good evening to everyone. You know, it's very difficult to do this in English, but I will try. Normally, thina sibulela ngesiXhosa. Okay, ndithunyiwe ke ngamangwane. Omasumpa, omasingasileke. Ohlongwane. Thina ke sifuna ukuchaza nje ihistory kancinci ukuthi kutheni okholeka abazifumana baseTanzania bayincanca ebeleni lento bebengayiqala ukusukela pha kuMatiwane emva kokuba sesachithwa ngabelungu apha eMpolo. We were taught that we have solidarity among each other. So ke abantu abadala bathe manibulele lo mcimbi wenziwe nguKhongolose nohulumende wase-South Africa. Ndibulele namanesi nawo wonke umuntu ozimasileyo. Sibulela kakhulu. Siyathemba ke ayiphelelanga apha kumangwane niyayenza nakomnye umuntu. Enkosi.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the family, siyabulela kakhulu. Again, bulise our minister in the presidency and all government leaders. Singena apho sonke ngaphansi kwakhe. Bulise leadership here Women's League, and thank you very much for being here. Thanks na kumfundisi osivuleleyo. Thanks ku family yakashibane family yakatuniswa. We are here saying utata President Julius Nyerere and President Oliver Tambo must be smiling wherever they are. And those activists of those days, Babu Kovalimpeki, Johnny Makatini, Ahmed Katrada, Albertina Sisulu, should be also be proud of us. I am saddened to say, Umama Umbete Uthetha kangaka nje has not written us any book. And that makes me sad. Listen to the history that she has. From the early 60s, she was a young girl. And thanks to Umama wethu, Deputy Minister Uma Ngoba uyena osinyakazise kangaka wenza konke, and thanks to the founders of these 20 Nightingale nurses. So for us as government, we are humbled to have a leader like you. We are going to be meeting on the 22nd of April. Joyce, you are a very strong woman. For doing what you've done to us. Very difficult task that we have just performed up to now. And yonke imndeni mahlongwane siyabulela kakhulu kunina uNkulunkulu anithwale nonke. Thank you very much.
Lizali City Galako Tikongo Siye Yaliso Songitangazo Amadolo elilizwe bagako bepa bigwako sitezi tizo Lu zwi lakho uze usivuse